Chemsex, or party and play culture, PnP, might be fun and manageable for some, but for a lot of others of us, we need to have some really good boundaries in place, or we have to keep an eye on things because it can become hard to manage or can get out of control. Many of us sort of experience things like staying awake longer than we planned to, or missing days at work, staying up longer than we wanted to, or doing things under the influence of drugs that we wish we hadn't have done. And most of us are sort of able to manage that for a period of time. But engaging in chemsex is something which we really should be accessing harm reduction information about first and foremost. So, I mean, the first point I want to make is that visiting your local gay charity or your local chemsex or party and play support service doesn't have to be only going there because something went wrong. Those services are really designed to help sort of prevent the harms and sort of give tools and skills to how to manage things safely. So things like if you are using GHB or GBL, how to dose the right amount at the right time interval to avoid overdose, and how you never mix it with ketamine or alcohol or opiates like Valium. Basic harm reduction information like that, and learning the skills of how to dose the right amount at the right time, because it's a lot of people are dying because they're getting that wrong. Also, how to not let GHB or GBL use in a party context turn into a physical dependence, because G is one of those drugs on the planet which we can get physically addicted to, and even the withdrawals can be potentially fatal, but really, really hard to come off it, and detoxes are hard to find. So, yeah, learning those skills is one. Another with crystal meth is harm reduction information. So, I mean, in some parts of the world, crystal meth is mixed, adulterated with fentanyl, which can cause overdoses and is deaths. In other parts, that's more rare. In other parts of the world, fentanyl is quite rare. But essentially, crystal meth causes one of the most common side effects is a sort of a drug-induced psychosis, so getting really paranoid on the second or third day, and those symptoms can be like perceptions of persecution. So you can be convinced that there's some conspiracy that you're at the center of, and some people wish you harm, and you don't really know why, but they're doing things like playing with the folders on your phone, or hacking your phone, hacking your webcam, following you around. They have a particular agenda, but it's quite hard to sort of pinpoint why or who or evidence. And that can stay with you for days, and it's really frightening. So learning all about that can be in advance is something you can do, and it can also be a sign that it might be time to take a break. It's hard to sort of, not many people die from overdoses from crystal meth unless it's mixed with fentanyl. It's quite rare, but you can get quite a rush from it. And the main part, apart from the drug-induced psychosis that can come with it, is a kind of slow, over a period of time, psychological dependence on it. If you have sex on crystal meth repeatedly, after some time, it comes really hard to enjoy sex and arousal without it. And that's kind of like a psychological dependence, and that can require some therapy and help to learn how to enjoy sex again. Also, it can creep up on us. We can start to rely so much on that pleasure that we can ignore other important things in life, like pleasures we get from going to the cinema or from barbecues or checking in with friends or visiting our mum or stuff like that. So keeping a check on just that with some help about how to keep some boundaries in place, that I'm not losing perspective on those kinds of things. Then, of course, there's all the HIV prevention and safe sex stuff that we all need to know. Putting boundaries in place, being safe when online and playing, being aware of the sexual consent to sex issues that can be a little unclear on boundaries in some chemsex environments. So being skilled up on all of these things is something we can do by reading up online, or by going to our local gay charity or a local sexual health clinic or a local chemsex support service, assuming they're familiar with gay sex, so that we can get skilled up on harm reduction techniques and behaviours and put boundaries in place to prevent problems happening, rather than waiting for a problem to happening and then you go get the help. They're not designed to work that way. They're designed to sort of help you before things go wrong. So chems are different from ecstasy and cocaine and all those fun stuff. They are a little more problematic. So it is wise to be informed about those drugs when we do them, and not just wait for things to go wrong before we access support. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, as a person that works in this field, people who didn't go and get the information beforehand thought the only reason to go and get help was when everything went wrong, and then there's so much mess to clean up. But if they become to access some support, we could teach people the skills on how to be as safe as possible and avoid harms happening if possible. One good way to check is how frequently do you want to be doing this? Is it happening every month now, and you only wanted it to be like on bank holidays or certain circuit party festivals, but it's now creeping into every month? Or is it happening every weekend, and that just crept up on you and didn't really know what happened? So you don't have to like put your hands up in the air and name yourself as an addict or rush off to a mental health service to get help. It can just be as simple as, I think I want to try a weekend off. And it's kind of like a self-assessment to see, can I do this? Because of the nature of particular stimulant use and the nature of psychological dependence is that we're triggering parts of our brain which are very related to primal, instinctive, automatic behavior stuff, like pleasure seeking. Sex is not just fun, it's also about survival of the species. So it's rooted in part of our brain which is about crucial survival of this human animal. And pleasure seeking, like enjoying food when we're hungry, enjoying water when we're dying of thirst. These aren't just pleasures, these are things that keep us alive urgently. So when we're doing drugs, we're triggering those same parts of the brain about pleasure seeking, reward, dopamine and adrenaline, fight or flight. We're not just doing drugs for fun, we're actually triggering a part of the brain which is about repetitive behavior urgently. And so suddenly deciding with, say, another part of your brain, the cognitive part of your brain, that I think I'll take a break this weekend. Sometimes it isn't always that easy. Sometimes that other part of our brain is saying, no, you won't. No. And it sort of sends you cravings and triggers and emotions and impulses, and it kind of compels you to use despite yourself. That's the nature of addiction, I guess, if we want to use that word, but just the nature of psychological dependence. What happens when we do drugs that trigger that part of our brain? So if we do it in a repeated way, our brains just try to protect us in a weird way, but making us continue to do it, even when we've decided we want to break. But it's easy enough to break. It's just make a loud and proud choice. I commit to not using this weekend. Say it to a friend. Say it to your favourite healthcare worker in your gay charity. Say it to me in my email. Say it to your flatmate. Say it out loud. I commit to not using. Keep busy that weekend. Put things in place. Be aware that you will have cravings and impulses to use, and know why that's happening. Don't be frightened or alarmed by it or think that you don't have control. It's just a craving, and it happens because that part of our brain is thinking that's the right thing to do. So you just write it out. Just be calm. Don't react emotionally to that. Don't react at all. Just delay acting. Smile and breathe, and it goes away, and get through your weekend without using. Now, some of us, then you might decide, I only want to do this once a month, and do that every weekend. Do that. Commit to a goal. List why it's important to you. Have a craving management technique in place. So it's those three things. Commit to a goal. Be aware why your goal is important to you and be committed to it. And have some craving management techniques, skills on hand so that you know how to manage a craving when they happen. It might just be taking a shower. It might be breathing. I might be talking to a friend. I might be just changing that headspace you get into when your brain is saying, do drugs, do drugs, do drugs. We don't always need to go rushing to emergency services or to addiction support to deal with that. We can all just sometimes just have a thought, I've never actually tried to set a boundary and stick to it. So it's usually quite easier than we think. But of course, our staff in the Chemsex support services, in our gay charities, sexual health clinics and addiction services, they're trained and skilled to sort of help us learn those skills. And if they're not, they can find someone that is. So really it's just sitting down one day and reflecting, what are my boundaries? How often do I want to use? Do I know my harm reduction information? How do I want drugs and sex to fit into my life? When did I last have sober sex? How do I want sober sex to fit into my life? How much of my life do I want to be on chems? How much of it do I want to be sober sex? Sort of reflecting on these things so that we then know how can we make chems fit into our life in the way we want it to, without it taking control of us, where we are still robust and engaged in life and joys and pleasures and other activities of the brain, but also of our emotions and our heart and our body, so that it doesn't become a problem for us. These things are really important. And your local gay charity is there to help you with those things. Thanks.